Hi everybody, welcome back. I saw the lights go down, so I think that's my cue to start. So yeah, very little from myself here other than to introduce our second keynote speaker of the day, Chris Hines MBE on sustainability. Chris.
It's a delight to be here, talking to lots of VIPs, i.e. very important people. We live in a world where sometimes the Kardashians will be held up as VIPs. I think the people in this room are VIPs because everything that you do in your daily lives helps make the place a better world in which people live, especially in the accommodation and the buildings provided. The MBE stands for Moaning Bloody Environmentalist, and I'm going to tell you that story. And I've got about 80 slides. I'm going to try and rip through them. But what a brilliant kind of first session this morning, and I think there was lots of transitions from that session and what we know about safety towards the safety of everybody who lives on the face of the planet Earth and how we look after everybody. So time as the first thing. This is my gran and granddad 100 years ago, 102 years ago on their wedding day. My granddad, William, had just come back from World War I. Sadly, we're back into that situation where we've got war on the border of Europe. We've got an escalating war in the Middle East. But the other reason I put this one up is because if you showed them the world in which we live now, our computers, our technology, the way that we fly, our transport, the buildings that we live in, all of that, it would completely blow their minds. They might even want to burn us as witches. And one of the things that we have to be aware of is that in this next 100 years, if we were to come back and look at the world in 100 years' time, some of the things that will have been invented will scare the hell out of us. We won't comprehend them. We have to have a confidence that as we go forwards, we develop those technologies and we come through and fulfill them behind. I was born. So that picture was taken, there was 1.9 billion people in the world. When I was born, there were 3.2 billion people, so that's 40 years later. I was born on the edge of Dartmoor. I grew up, I was exposed to the natural environment. Dartmoor, I still go up there for physical and mental well-being, that love of the natural environment. Still go surfing. I was surfing last week, but it's been a love of mine. Have an absolute love of trees. This is when I lived in one for about 2 years. Not really. But this love of the natural environment, this love of the planet on which we live, is the thing that drives me. And if you love something, you will do anything you can to protect it. And there's this brilliant quote from Alice Walker, who wrote The Colour Purple, and an amazing race, environment, and gender campaigner. Activism is the rent I pay for living on the planet. And boy, oh boy, our rent is absolutely due at the moment. I'm going to tell you a quick story about intelligent activism, the story of Surfers Against Sewage, and then I'm going to relay and I'm going to try and kind of weave that in as to what lessons that we can learn for the construction sector. I work with a construction company 2 days a month on a consultation and a provocation to try to make them go quicker, try to instill that urgency and that breadth and depth of what they do. And also, I failed all my A-levels at school, and I did end up being a brickies labourer for about 6 months of my life. So intelligent activism. First of all, absolutely know your aim. This is Porthtowan Beach. I still live about a mile up the valley from this. This is low tide, grinding Porthtowan. I have a House of Commons Select Committee report at home that says Mr. Hines brought to our attention the case of Porthtowan, known by the locals as Porth Tampon because of the dreadful state of the waters there. Little tiny footnote to that. That chimney up there used to be, so that's from the copper and tin mining industry. If you crawl into a cave under there and scramble up onto a little ledge, you'll find 2 porcelain pipes, and that's because up on the top, what's now known as RAF Portreath used to be known as Nant's Acute Chemical Warfare Plant, producing sarin gas, all of that kind of stuff, flush it straight into the sea. So anyway, that was our aim, to be able to enjoy the coastal environment for the wonderful thing that it was. Unfortunately, we had a problem. I'll quote Margaret Thatcher. In 1989, at the privatisation of the water industry, she stated that all sewage was treated before discharge. That was a downright lie. There were 400 million gallons of completely crude sewage being discharged around our coastal waters. From Newquay to Newcastle, Brighton to Blackpool, there were no sewage treatment works in any city, town or village. This is one of the ones in Cambourne. This is the one that affected our beach. That isn't a made-up picture. That was the state of our rock pools. And the water industry, so this is kind of first lesson of how you adapt and how you drive change. The water industry were completely male at that time. You know, it's amazing looking around this room today and seeing all the females. When you used to go to these kind of conferences back in the early 90s, there were absolutely no women, none, and very few young people. And And the water industry, very male, very macho, they just wanted to build big pipes and big pumps, big engineering projects, and discharge all this stuff further out to sea. But if you look at the issue of the die-off rates of bacteria and viruses in the water, these were what they were measuring, these things. And they die off fecal coliforms in a matter of hours, maybe a couple of days. The things that actually make you ill, hepatitis A, enteroviruses, can last for up to 100 days. So the very thing that they were trying to do was completely flawed, and no one was testing them. They were telling us that the beaches were all fine, we should shut up and go away. So one of our things, so we knew our problem, we knew our aim, we knew our problem, we had to find a solution. We looked high and low, we found on the island of Jersey that they had abandoned the concept of long sea outfalls, and they built this thing called UV technology. So this new technology that was being invented, back to my gran and granddad's point. We looked at that and we gave some evidence to House of Lords Select Committee based on the written evidence. I was asked to go to London, give oral evidence, and they quizzed me on this, the Lords and Ladies, and they said, how confident are you in this tech? My response was that based on the bacterial count in Jersey's outfall pipe compared to the bacterial count on our beaches that we were bathing on, I would feel 50 times safer sticking my head up Jersey's outfall pipe than I would bathing on those beaches. A week after I made that statement, we got a phone call from the island of Jersey's tourist department who said, this would make brilliant marketing material for us. Would you like to come over? And this is their outfall pipe. And an hour before this picture was taken, the water was up to the end of that pipe. We had Sky News, BBC, ITV, etc., Press Association, Reuters, all there. And I jumped off the end of the pipe and I turned around, I paddled as hard as I could, and I duck dived into the mouth of 100,000 people's sewage. And I got that far up the pipe before I was blown back out with the force of it, but I stand by what I said. Looked, tasted, and smelt cleaner than the beaches that we were bathing on. So we found our solution, and importantly, it was £9 million cheaper than building the long sea outfall. So let's pop that myth once and for all. Doing the right thing environmentally isn't necessarily more expensive, and you'll hear this by an industry that doesn't want to move. Oh, you can't do that, it'll always cost more. If you take into account the triple bottom line, and I'll come to that in a while, it often works better. We then had to persuade water companies to change. This is a picture of, so we'd always bashed into the water companies, demoing hard, pushing them. But Welsh Water, Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water at one point sent us a fax, and they said, look, we're going to adopt a full sewage treatment policy, abandon long sea outfalls, everything's going to get UV. Will you come and open that first sewage treatment works for us? And this is at the opening of Criccieth in North Wales. We cut the ribbon, it's surfaced against Sewage's name on that plaque. So we've done two things now. One, we found our solution, but we also split that entire solid wall of a privatised water industry. Second company to change, Wessex Water. Gentleman on this side is Colin Skellett, who was the chief exec at the time. A different technology again, so another new technology coming through. This is a microfiltration unit, 99.98% removal of all viruses and bacteria. And what's being poured over our heads there is what comes out of Porlock sewage treatment works. So again, a change. And Wessex Water then, because I had a good relationship, I started to kind of like engage with them on the whole issue of sustainability. And this was a piece of work that Jonathan Porritt's Forum for the Future did with them. But if you do the right thing as a company, sustainably wise, environmentally, your impact is significantly reduced. Externally, people want to play ball with you because you're an innovator, you're a safer bet, your staff feel fulfilled and safe, and boy, oh boy, can you attract and retain the best. So you keep building this company that is the best company. Your infrastructure is sustainable and your finances are growing. So we found our solution, we knew our aim, problem identified, found the solution, persuading companies to change. How do you drive these things up the public agenda? You go around the country with wetsuits, gas masks, and a 10-foot inflatable turd. That gets you front page of the national newspapers, etc. And this picture would have appeared on the front page of The Guardian and all that kind of stuff. And if you're driving things up the public agenda, you're driving them up the political agenda. And one quick thing, this is our house. We absolutely have the right, and we should be in there being heard, having our agenda heard, as much as all the lobbyists and the money are having their agendas heard. We went to the Houses of Parliament within 10 months of forming, and the day we got there, we pulled the Secretary of State for the Environment, the Lib Dem and Labour Environment spokesman into a debating room in front of camera, and the government announced a £2 million spend into research into the health effects of bathing in sewage-contaminated seawater. So even though we didn't know what we were doing, and it was scary as hell, that very act of stepping forward helped trigger that change. Time. One of our members in 1992 rang up and said, I bought sas.org.uk for you. And we all went, what the hell's he talking about? So this is that thing of time and inventions coming through that we don't even know what they're going to mean. When I left SAS in the year 2000, I'd never sent a single email. I'm going to play this brief advert. I've got time, I think. This, again, was another set of our members who phoned up and said, come to London. Next time you're in London, we want to make a film for you. And then I'll tell you how we deployed it. Now, we were deemed to be mainly of a political nature, and we had to be a political campaign. We were apolitical, we were the politics of clean seas, we wouldn't have cared which way around this was, we still would have gone as hard at any party. So we were banned from showing our advert on national television, not that we'd ever have been able to afford any, but we could place it in cinemas as part of the Pearl and Dean. Now, and if you were going to do that, you would choose the Bournemouth cinema when the Conservative Party conference was in Bournemouth, wouldn't you? At which point you were able to show it in the cinema and then release it to the news desks to say SAS show banned advert during Tory Party conference, at which point they could play the whole part of that advert. So we showed it there, we got it on the TV, and then we went around every single TV region in the UK and placed it in the cinema and got the same effect. So that multiplying of effort and the message that we need to get out, how do we get the messages out about a sustainable construction industry and the things that we want to achieve? Law, we do live in a country where we have some brilliant laws. These two ladies, Rachel and Sarah, again, over the state of Portampon Beach, we went to the Royal Courts of Justice. Well, first of all, we gave the council an option to do the right thing and issue an abatement notice against South West Water. They said go to hell. We took them to the Royal Courts of Justice, and we won the case on Sarah and Rachel. They got so fired up about this, the two of them, again, both single mums, left school age 16, that Sarah is, on this one, is now a school teacher, and on the right-hand side, you have Dr. Rachel Shelley. She went through and did the whole thing, powered up, empowering women. We bought shares in every single water company, the right of access to go to their annual general meetings, ask awkward questions, tell the financial correspondents in the national newspapers and BBC Breakfast News which water companies were safe, which ones were barking, and which ones should be completely put in a bin. We even briefed the President of the European Parliament, and again, it's very sad, again, that we've lost those standards, and we heard Paul Morrell talk about that this morning, that there isn't this thing. Some of the things that were lost by our coming out of Europe, we really need to address, because if we don't have that there's too many ways for people to wriggle around behind it. There was a massive change of election in 1997, again, just like it's happened recently. And very shortly after that, we'd driven this issue up the public agenda in all those coastal constituencies that did that flip from Conservative to Labour. And we were called as a special advisor to the Minister, Michael Meacher. Then we were called in front of this select committee, and it concluded that we believe that by the year 2002, all sewage should be treated at tertiary times in all places and all times in all places. And following up of that came out in the February of 98, and then in September 98, the government ruled that an extra £9.5 billion should be spent, and that everything should have at least secondary treatment with UV disinfection or microfiltration for 2/3 of the discharges to coastal waters. And when you go around the coast of the UK today, there are no continuous discharges of untreated sewage. So we'd done this as a bunch of campaigners with no campaign experience whatsoever, just this sheer gritted bloody determination. We knew our aim, we knew the problem and found the solution. We created that environment for change, we negotiated, stayed at the table, we knew who our team were and our experts, and funding and team, and making it fun. And when I say making it fun, it's that kind of passion. But it was deadly serious, and I'm just going to pay testimony now to a woman and a child. In the last year I was there, I was called to give out evidence of the coroner's inquest into the death of 8-year-old Heather Preen, and I've recently been back in contact with her mother, and it was concluded that sewage was one of the potential risks and routes of infection. And watch out for a programme that's coming out next year called Isle of Shite. It's just been commissioned by Channel 4 by the makers of Partygate. So next autumn, watch out for that. Always put your hand up and ask for help. Two things happen. One, lots of other people say, oh, I thought I was the only one struggling with that. You get that legitimate thing. And the second thing that happens is someone somewhere will say, yeah, I can help you. And we're in that industry. We're in that industry that we all need to help each other. That's halfway through my talk. On time, 15 seconds, 10 minutes, seconds left. I took a year's break because it burns you out, campaigning at that kind of pace. So I'd done that for 10 years. We'd achieved 85% of what we set out to do. I then went to this bonkers place, you know, the abandoned clay pit that was turned into this, the Amazing Eden project. If you dug around the back, they had no waste management facilities whatsoever. So there's Sir Tim Smith. Ta-da! It's all shiny and everything. But during that dreadful process of value engineering, they'd edited out loads of the good stuff in order to build it and make it shiny. And they were, boy, oh boy, they were lucky not to get burnt on a few of those key environmental processes that they should have been doing. But I went there to try to use some of the lessons that I'd learned from campaigning and apply them to how all 8 billion of us, and it's now 8.2 billion, live on the face of the planet in harmony with it and with each other. And, you know, wake up call, we should be hearing those sirens. We should be really alarmed about what's happening. This is really, really urgent. We can all remember Greta, Prince William. We've got 10 years to save the planet. Well, guess what? 5 of them are bloody well gone. That's how urgent this is. And yet when you go around the country, you just see buildings being made that they just know this thought process isn't there. And our ice caps are melting. Sod's law, it's the people with the smallest carbon footprints who are on the front line, who are suffering most. Wildfires, you know, Australia, USA, London. That moment when London burnt, and it was front page, you know, the Daily Mail was saying, snowflake Britain, it's just a warm day. And then the next day it was saying London's burning because it was its readers whose houses were burning down. Acidification of our oceans and the destruction of our coral reefs. This one, a UN report, up to a million species facing extinction, and yet we're still arrogant enough to think that we're not one of them. If 1 million species go down, the chances of us not being significantly affected are minimal. And this one, climate change, helped spark the Syrian war, which led to mass migration, which led to political destabilization right across the whole of Europe. And this report that came out a couple of months ago from Jonathan Porritt, and again, you know, migration in hotter times. If we don't sort this out, the political instability of war and all that kind of stuff that we're currently seeing will just be unbelievably hard. And this book, you know, this is one of the smallest books that you may ever read, but it's worth hunting out. And he caused outrage because the whole environmental movement went, no, 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 you can't say that. You can't say that if we stop pretending that if we've gone through 1.5 degrees. But we are. The chances of us not going through 1.5, again, are minimal. And Grenfell, I put this slide up and I wasn't sure whether to include it, but climate crisis, the climate emergency, is like a chronic version of what happened at Grenfell. There are people dying right now and will continue to die because of the buildings that we design, the buildings that we build and that we make profit from. That is a harsh reality. And we won't see those people, and we probably can't put names to them and faces to them. But somewhere around the world, there are people who are being that heavily impacted. And we're going to pick this up on the panel and talk about it. So we have to drive off into this new dawn, this new way of being and living. And it was great hearing Paul say it earlier, but this thing of respecting facts and experts, we have to bring that back into the table. We have to love science and engineering. And you know, the dreadful thing through COVID and the conspiracy theories and everything that all hacked away at that confidence in scientific knowledge. And we need to do some bright things. We need to turn half these lights out. You know, we need to do some real quick wins and reduce that carbon footprint quickly. We need to live in a sustainable way, a triple bottom line thinking, you know, and if you don't know of John Elkington, go and find his books and look at, you know, the godfather of sustainability. He introduced this concept of triple bottom line thinking where we not only take into account profit, but also people and the planet. We need to move from the linear economy where we just take, make, dump, take, make, dump, and move into the circular economy. All of our buildings should be being designed to those kind of principles. Mark Carney, again, he got to mention earlier, but in his book, Values, Building a Better World for All, there's this quote: profit is no more the purpose of business than breathing is the purpose of living. And it's not that you don't need to make money, but you also need to take into account people and planet at the same time. So triple bottom line in action. When the Eden project was built, there were no waste management facilities. On a Friday afternoon, as well as designing the waste management system, I would put on a dirty clothes, jeans, T-shirts, and I would go and sift through all of the waste. And we went right through every single bin bag on site at one point. And bin bags we did it for 7 days, and they were like piles this big of black bin liners. And we looked at the triple bottom line of either staying with the disposable, single-use disposable cups, plates, saucers, or putting in a dishwasher. Triple bottom line wise, environmentally, by putting in the dishwasher, we reduced our landfill by 8 tons a year. We reduced the carbon of the manufacture and transportation to us. Socially, we created 2 jobs. We gave people a nicer cup of tea, and we found on the day we launched it that they could have a salad because it wasn't falling off the floppy cardboard plates. Financially, we sold more tea, we sold more salad, and we saved ourselves $189,000 over a 5-year period. So again, triple bottom line works. A little tiny bit on products, because we're going to be talking about products. Surfboard's horrible toxic lumps. So we made this surfboard from balsa and hemp, laminated in castor oil resin. We got a bit of media coverage, but we thought we'd get more. But Ben then, who works in the PR comms, he liked his cricket, and he said, can we make a cricket box? So we made this cricket box, and there was a little thing as well of picking up about how risky it is with products and launching products. So anyway, we got a bowler to come and chuck some balls at him, and unfortunately the helmet didn't fit. One went through and hit him in the eye, and the picture with the blood got us on the front page of the Metro. We got the Mumbai Times in India, and we got Test Match Special when England were playing Australia. Footnote to that, though, this is Dylan, this is Ben's son, so the box did work, okay? Just to clarify that one. You know, net zero, we've seen these definitions, and absolutely, though, I did want to flag up, you know, means cutting greenhouse gases emissions to as close to zero as possible. That's a UN mandate. When we build buildings, we need to be cutting greenhouse gas emissions as close to zero. It's been said by the UN. We can't just ignore this and think that it's not our responsibility. We should all know our carbon footprints, our personal ones. This is a bit of work I do with the BBC. They've measured the carbon footprint of every single program they produce. This little logo that used to just be on programs like Springwatch is now on everything from Strictly to Match of the Day, every single program. They're doing that. Every single building that we make should have a carbon footprint stamp on it, on every single building that we make. This is a city in Finland that are not only doing that, they're also measuring the biodiversity footprint of the city as well. Our water footprint, again, we need to think about that, especially in the east of England where we're having water scarcity coming through. And this thing, again, people will say, but you know, wind turbines, we're not driving that technology forward quick enough. Those wind turbines don't even exist anymore. They've been taken down, and more up to date, more powerful ones have been installed. Because on the principle, if we hadn't had the brick-sized telephone, and it was just a telephone, we wouldn't have the amazing computers that we run around with in our pockets now. And building a climate crisis, is that what we're doing? Are we building a climate crisis? Are we building into the way? And what we can be sure with 40% of emissions is that if we don't solve the buildings, we're bust. This little quote from the RICS Sustainability Report of last year, and I'm just going to go in. This year's Sustainability Report is a wake-up call to our industry. We are making progress, but not enough to reach net zero by 2050. Indeed, the picture is one of an industry reluctant to pursue a low-carbon future. And we were talking earlier about the REBA stages. Sustainability needs to be right up here, as does health and safety. my kind of challenge is that we need to change that whole way that we build that process. Clients need to be educated. Everything needs to be happening up here. Clients, architects, designers, planners, we need to be having proper, adult, responsible conversations that far up before anything even gets designed. It's designed to do the job that it's done in a world where we're facing a climate crisis and we need to deliver amazing health and safety. We need to think of large-scale infrastructure projects as drivers of change, by example, through their operation, but also as communication. You know, we're a few hundred yards away from the embankment, one of the greatest environmental bits of progress that has ever happened in this country, because the embankments were the bits that took all the sewage off the streets and discharged it further out down the Thames. A massive, great improvement. And if Taiwan can build a stadium covered in solar that is completely solar independent, energy independent, why aren't we doing that with all of it? You know, they just built one up in there, they're building one up at Everton. But it's not got this, it's not going to deliver to that standard. And Bentley's, I'll put this in, Bentley's factory at times is completely operating out off the grid. The bits being manufactured aren't, they have to come there. But at times, Bentley are doing that. If it's good enough for Bentley, it's good enough for us all. Brilliant things that are happening, like Lang O'Rourke making this commitment to all zero carbon. And they didn't say by next year. The moment they issued that, they did it. A quick summary of a project that I kind of worked on. This is the Wave up in Bristol, powered by renewable energy from the word go, and built differently. So these are the company. When they designed it, they looked at kind of carbon reduction, and they did glulam to replace the steel. They designed the site levels to reduce the soil coming on site. And by doing these varying things and embedding plastic fibers in the concrete, they helped reduce by 12% the carbon footprint and the use of carbon. Everything should be doing that kind of things. And they've now built their own solar, and they not only operate off-grid, they actually export into grid. Carbon cost calculators, we're seeing these now. Carbon and cost will just sync together. Value engineering, again, we need to be aware of what those things are and not allow the best bits to be dropped out. Retrofit new build, that's a massive, great challenge, and I know we've got lots of architects. That shift needs to be there. We can't just knock down buildings and build all new. Your role, leadership, expertise, you are the people who can deliver this kind of stuff. Innovation, collaboration, your spend, your investments, but more importantly, your force for good, you as a power. And we need collaboration as well as competition. Competition's great, but when we make a major step like UV technology, like microfiltration, we need to share it with everybody and then retain that bit, take the impetus from having invented it and being a leader and being the people who invented it and drive it forward to the next stage. So that collaboration v competition. And as a prime example, these were the ladies who every Saturday go out and try and desperately beat each other, and yet when they needed to, they came together as the Lionesses and won the European Cup. We need to drive off into this world in this book that Jonathan Porritt wrote, The World We Made, which is set in the year 2050, and it's looking back and it's going, we have made it. We have created this sustainable world. And it's well worth hunting down. It's hard to find now. Intelligent activism. We are the activists. Activists aren't just banging on environmentalists like me. Every one of us has to be an activist in the professional skills. We need to bring our skills to the table. We need to use every tool that's been used to create this mad, crazy version of the world in which we live, and we need to use those tools better. We need to stretch every sinew and buzz every neuron and do the absolute thing. And we need to drive towards this point of inflection. I don't know where we are on this graph. I would hope we're somewhere coming towards that point of neutrality with all the technology and the skill and the passion and the changes that we're going to drive through, and that we drive through this and off into a positive future. And if at times we think, jeepers, we can't do that, then remember that a bunch of surfers with no campaigning experience whatsoever helped turn that into that, and a bunch of dreamers at the Eden Project turned that into that, and that, then just think we can absolutely do this and we must do this. Thank you very much.